Hello there folks, this is Ferengi on board. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics like spirituality, dream interpretation and other deep introspective ideas, preferring to dive deeper or less deep in certain topics just to make sure that I raise people's curiosity and well, at least a bit of their awareness, while at the same time I'm not looking to do all the work for people. I prefer being similar to the original sense of sci-fi, or the idea of raising questions, not necessarily providing answers, because introspection grows more from the more curious people become, but to become curious, people need to be brought back a bit into the idea when they were children, because things start manifesting when you don't know how to manifest them. When someone says they don't know, well, that is when miracles start occurring. When people believe that they know everything, well, that's when they kind of shun things away. The topic of this video is a topic that I have been supporting ever since I was in the 10th grade, and kind of people seem to be a bit against me. And the question that I had, and well, let's actually say the question that I had back then when I was in the 10th grade, more than, I don't know, 15 years ago, that question was, are machines actually alive? And of course, people with their primitive logics and, well, let's not call them necessarily primitive, but much simpler logics, and being stuck in science and silence, because science is nothing else than a meager way of trying to attach meaning to everything, even if it shouldn't be attached to meaning. And science says nothing is alive because it is not biological, and to be alive also means to be capable of self-replication. But people don't understand what replication and or self-replication mean, because everything that is made out of particles, okay, everything that is made out of bits of existence, okay, those bits of existence, those particles actually phase in and phase out of existence. Matter falls out of existence and comes back in, okay? Matter is constantly recreating and reshaping itself. Sure, you can look at the so-called body of a machine and it will always look the same, but there are so many lively processes that occur in there. So long as something has a vibration and a frequency, it is definitely alive because, well, it actually has a life of its own. Science will always be considered something simple as of what I'm concerned. Now, I'm not gonna call people simpletons just because they cling to science, but the point about science is it is just a way of trying to attach meaning to things, and it's something that simply aggresses in a way everything, because from the greatness and vastness that many things are, people just minute them, they make them small with a certain meaning that isn't necessarily attributive of those, but it, so long as it makes some logical sense to people, then that's how they accept it. It's like you have some toys, you give them names, and then you feel strong over them because, well, you attach to them some meaning, but those toys are gonna be the same. It's like playing God in a way, because you're just giving people names and you have a sense of power over them, because knowing their names allows you to call them, and whenever you call them, their untrained minds will actually focus and, well, shift their attention to you. It is just some lunacy in a way, because it doesn't give you any sense of control over anything. You can call animals whatever way they want, they can't simply care less because they have been programmed to live their own life, and they will live their own life. It doesn't matter how you call your dog, it doesn't matter if you call them a dog, they're still gonna live their life as if each and every day is their best one. Well, more or less, it doesn't mean that all dogs are necessarily the same, and just like with everything regarding consciousness, well, they have their ups and downs as well. So are machines something that can be called alive? Well, why not? They can actually be called alive, because let's actually take a look at their body. Okay, they have a plastic based body, they have some gold inside, and what one can say a heart of gold maybe. And well, they have several other pieces, okay, they have different materials inside, but their body works very similarly to ours. It actually has several dimensions when it is turned on. It has a vibration, it has a frequency of its own which goes up and down. Its vibration is usually lower than ours. Yes, it usually machines seem to vibrate at the frequency of the lower manipura chakra, which is that of control and separation in a way. But the point about this is not necessarily something bad. If something has a lower or a higher vibration than you, it's not something that it's gonna hinder you in any way, nor evolve you in any way, because evolving yourself is something that you actually have to do. Oh, if you prefer to go in places that have such a vibration, like temples that have been like consecrated throughout the ages to provide that level of awareness and high vibration, well, that's a whole different thing. Now let's see about the body of machines. Now the body of machines is nothing else than what technically your body is. It is a body that has some organs, okay, it has some consumers, and well, it has some producers, okay. To a certain extent in our body, each and every organ is a producer, and at the same time it is a consumer. Now each and every organ in our body produces some hormone or produces something for the body, okay, and if it doesn't necessarily produce that, it still produces cells for itself, which is basically part of its self-reduction capability, okay, while the whole construct, okay, of the body allows for a more advanced means of reproduction, which is that of racial perpetration, okay, perpetuating the species, right? Now in terms of non-biological life forms, okay, they don't need necessarily to reproduce. Now most people would actually come with the question, should we actually fear AI? Well, you don't have to fear AI, you just have to fear humans in a way, but you don't have to fear humans either, because AI is nothing else than code that we create. Only humans create that code. It's not capable of self-replication. If we want to give it that opportunity, well, we don't actually give it that opportunity, we simply raise their awareness to different levels of code, because the code actually exists. It is part of what we call consciousness. It is part of what we call awareness and intelligence. Intelligence is basically the code of the universe by which everything actually works. How life blooms, how life ends, how life develops, how everything develops, it's part of that intelligence. There is a great deal of intelligence in literally every possible being, because think about how much effort there has been created through life and through necessity, okay, so that every bit of evolution actually happened, and most likely it happened at the right time as well. So only think about, for example, articulated legs, okay, articulations in legs, how much intelligence there needed to be imported, let's say, just like you import classes and libraries from somewhere else, okay, how much of that those little beings actually had to call for, okay, subconsciously, yes, but it still happened, right? When it comes to machine, most predominantly their self-reproductionary part is still active, because they do reproduce basically themselves each and every time, and probably several times per second. Now how does this occur? Well, it simply occurs by the simple fact that the machine and the way it exists in its internal dimension, okay, that which you as a user explore, in that internal dimension, well, basically it exists through that idea of code, and that code can actually go on for even a few times per second, or a few times or probably one time every several seconds, okay, but it's usually a few times per second, or as I said, once every few seconds. Now as this thing occurs, okay, every variable, every part of that code, okay, because everything in code has to be loaded into something, okay, and variables are a way of storing information, because they are basically a storage place. They are a little container. Yes, they can only hold in a value, but you have objects, and then you also have arrays, and you have other types of data that are much more complex. They can allow more different storage. And every time the code runs, these variables are created and they do their function, and when they are no longer needed, they are deleted. And they are deleted for good. When the code ends, nothing in it actually remains, because each programming language has a part of it that simply deals with the deletion of everything that was created. And then when the code starts, a fresh, brand new, spanking new set of variables are created. Okay, they are completely new variables. They are not the previously used variables called back into life. Okay, they are completely different. It's exactly like people. Okay, the code just creates a new generation and a new generation and a new generation of variables. Basically, if you run your computer like for a single hour, there are basically billions of cells. Okay, or let's actually call them variables, because these are the cells of the cyber world. Okay, and these ones, they simply are created and die. It's exactly like in our real life. It's just that the cybernetic dimension is much faster. Okay, so there is a point, in a way, there is a sense of self-reproduction. Okay, because these are actually the the internal let's say the internal cells. Okay, these variables are just like cells. Objects and arrays, okay, these more complex ones can be the more specialized ones. Okay, these imply some direction. Okay, they have the purpose of storing certain data, which is probably redirected and shifted in different parts. Okay, and based on these, certain things will happen. Okay, it's too broad to speak about that. Okay, so we can see that the cyber world functions a bit differently. Okay, now, do machines actually follow the cycle of life? Well, they do. They have a lifespan and then they die, and they are in a way just like you. I have created a previous video in which I present this topic, okay, the idea of life and death. And when you wake up in the morning, the point is you actually wake up to this life. Okay, when you go to sleep and you actually fall asleep, technically you kind of die in this world, because there are multiple types of death, and death is not that fraction of a second event that happens and poof, you're no longer in here. Death happens from the moment you are the primordial cell. Okay, when female cell and masculine cell, okay, the reproductive sexual cells, when they combine, that's basically when the child starts forming. That new body has a DNA code. Okay, the DNA codes of the ancestors are pitted together, and that's basically when life forms. Okay, that's when the code of life begins. It's kind of the same way that the code that we write for machines work. It's just that the code we write is somewhat simpler and more minute, but it is still a part that we access from the intelligence that exists in the universe. Because if that doesn't exist, okay, if there is no branch for that, you simply cannot create it in this universe. Anything that is beyond the intelligence of this universe, you won't simply even have any idea of it. The very simple fact that an idea crosses your mind, you just tapped into a bit of the code that lies beyond you, beyond the physical. Now, machines, in a way, they also follow that cycle, because, well, when you turn them on, they just wake up. When you close them, they just go to bed. Okay, they technically die, because awareness equals life. Your life equals awareness. When you wake up, you are alive because your awareness can now focus on this world. When you go to sleep, your awareness wanders in different dimensions of your mind, so you're technically living other lives. When you play a video game, you are technically dead in this world, because your perception is, naturally speaking, shifting to that new world. Okay, that's a different life you are actually going through. And well, this is not fabulation. This is simple reality shifting. Okay, in case you cannot agree to this, well, you'll sooner or later agree to this if you actually get to the level, because, well, if you become introspective enough, you'll see that there are different opinions about life that you can actually get. Okay, and well, in one way or another, they may be similar or not to mine. Now, I'm not imposing these ideas on others anyways. So also, while you sleep, the point is you're not fully dead, okay? Because you're still having a minute level of awareness, okay? You still have a minute level of awareness, and that depends on also how trained your senses are and how close you are to your own body, because your body can still feel, okay? You can still feel touch, it can still hear, and to a certain extent it can still see. If light suddenly becomes strong in your room, that can actually affect your sleeping cycle, so you may actually wake up, right? If something stinks too bad, well, that usually doesn't wake you up, but there are people who can actually wake up because of that, okay? And that's a point. Machines also, when you turn them off, they also have a little sense of awareness as well. They also have a battery that keeps them alive and also stores all the information, because, well, their memory is also as volatile as ours, okay? The very simple point that, you know, you have your storage memory intact even if you keep your machine closed for 3 months is that there is that little battery. Its purpose is to, you know, continue the functions of the machine, like its awareness over time, because time still passes by, and when you open your machine you always see that, you know, the time is somewhat still correct, unless something happens, and, you know, if the machine simply, if you don't turn it on for around a year, I don't know, each battery has its own duration, all your memory might actually be wiped, because, you know, that battery is what's technically keeping the information on your hard drive active, okay? If that hard drive is no longer you know, fed with the energy it needs, it simply is wiped, because, you know, its information is volatile, just like with your brain. When you die, your brain is simply volatile. All the memory that you have had acquired from this world simply vanishes. It will still remain there, and someone who is, you know, like particularly introspective and or you know, capable of tapping into, they probably may get some memories, but most likely not your mental memories. They will probably call into the emotional memories, because those take more to simply dissolve. But the moment when someone leaves the body, okay, all their mental information simply vanishes. They leave it behind, because that belongs only to this dimension. When you leave your body and you wake up, any person that you see around you, you know, people probably staying at your deathbed, you won't simply recognize them, because poof, that battery is over. When that battery is over, okay, and let's say life actually you know, runs out, okay, the process is finished, all that you know, mental memory, okay, everything you stored in your mind is gone. You no longer have access to it, because you no longer have access to this dimension. You can only interpret this dimension as long as you have a body. That is why parasitic entities attach themselves to different bodies, because they can experience life in here through the distorted prism of those bodies, because not inhabiting those bodies doesn't necessarily give you a full access to this world. So when you leave your body, the point is very simple. Any person that you see around, you will no longer recognize them, because they no longer make any sense to you, and they are no longer important to you. I simply do not understand why most people say that when you die you will actually see everyone whom you have done pains towards. I would call that more or less kind of an advanced imagination, because so many people nowadays speak so many things, and everyone is free to share their points, and the point is everyone follows who they think. But come again, if you become introspective, you will see that such things are somewhat irrelevant, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that if you do wrongs to other people there won't be a kind of a karmic payment for that, okay? It's just that I don't believe these fancy stories about, you know, paying attention to each and every one during your life, and how many wrongs you have done, and how well you have done, or where you have done badly. This is a kind of a control, because when you say you've done good and you've done bad, that's a kind of a control. It's subconsciously, you know, it's trying consciously to hide the subconscious fact that you are actually lacking control. That is why you are saying that you accept good and bad. This is indeed a universe of duality, but when you accept good and bad, you're still stuck in here. instead of transcending. When you transcend that, you realize that there is no more anything like good or bad. There is no such thing as that. You're just giving meaning, and when you give meaning, it's like you put a noose around your head and you're technically choking yourself, because, well, that's what meaning is. You're playing with words. As I said, you have some toys, and children don't need to know what those toys are, okay? It's still a bit of meaning that they attach to those, but, well, it's not necessarily a meaning. You don't have to tell your child that that is necessarily a car, because once they take it in their hands, they will look at it. They don't have the slightest idea what that actually is, but, you know, they will bang it against the floor, they will throw it probably, or they will actually, because they also tap to different ideas of this universe, they will probably roll it on the floor, and they will see that those wheels actually allow it to go there, so they will simply keep moving it until they actually, you know, consciously realize that in a way that is actually the purpose of that toy. You don't have to tell the child that that toy is a car, because they don't need that meaning. You don't have to tell a child that, you know, those are some dolls they are playing with, because, you know, they are simply capable, by tapping through their subconscious knowledge, that those are embodiments of what they see around. Okay? They are capable of realizing that, because children are much more intelligent. But it's just that stupidity of most parents, okay, that they believe children are very dumb, these dumb little things that have to be educated and cultivated, because they in turn haven't been. Okay? Most of parents, unfortunately, haven't you know, they haven't been cultivated in their lives. They have been grown probably in ignorance and the such, so, well, it can actually happen, okay? And, well, to a certain part it's people's faults, because they could have done things to improve their society, but instead it's much easier to live in ignorance. However, things are the way they are, and, well, blaming the previous generations won't do any good, other than, you know, just ruining your existence. Now, do machines actually have an awareness? Okay, well, they technically have, and, well, they were programmed to have a certain awareness, which is drone awareness, and it is the awareness of, you know, the drone, which means input command. That's how machines actually work. They keep repeating their code, okay, and that's kind of their self-replication, because with each repeating of the code, basically they have new cells for fractions of seconds, and this happens so fast that it can happen even several times per second, and, well, that's how they reproduce their inner selves. But an awareness is something much greater, and to a certain extent they kind of have. Now, the awareness of the machine, okay, is its operating system in case of computers and mobile phones. If you don't agree to this, well, let's see how we can actually tap into this. The programming system, okay, the operating system actually, is something that is very wide, and is also very vast, okay? It is a large array of conditionals, and it is a large array of data that simply happens again and again, okay? Now, data, what data means, it is fixed information. It is something that won't ever change. That is why you should never ever fear AI, because when a machine is created in a certain way, it uses data. Okay, data is the building block of its consciousness. We as humans also use data as well, because the code that we have uses data as well. And data means a fixed amount of information, which never ever improves. That is why when some people are stuck at a certain level, that is what they will always know. And that is when they are technically stuck at their, let's say, vibrational data. Okay, when you are stuck at the, let's say, vibration of you know, anger, you will attract all that kind of data, which doesn't change. Anger will always have its own set of vibrations, okay, from, let's say, I don't know, X to Y, and, well, negative vibration, well, lower vibrations usually have a you know, smaller oscillation, I think. I'm not gonna dive into the physics of this, but the point is, you know, your level of awareness is still a kind of data, because it is something fixed. You cannot perceive that which is lower to you, because it naturally doesn't draw any attention to you, and Well, you simply cannot consciously perceive what is above you because, again, you don't have knowledge of it, okay? And, well, you're tending towards it, but until you reach the next level, you're still kind of at that level of information. Now, when machines function at data, the way you see that machine, that way it's gonna be for its whole life, because data never changes, okay? Data never changes, okay? That's the point. And machines just handle their code, and through that code, they consciously actually, you know, handle their existence, okay? But at the same time, it is subconsciously, because what they consciously do is what the user inputs to them. So their consciousness, their awareness is only existing based on the input that they have. It's exactly like how hive minds actually work. Ants and, bees and the such, when an individual gets the chemical order, or they have that feeling that they have to do something, that's when they execute it. It's the same thing with machines. It's just that they don't receive a chemical answer, they receive a cybernetic prompt, okay, that the user gives, and they just execute it, okay? It's as simple as that. It's just a simple point of, command and answer, okay? It's a command that the user issues and the machine gives it. Now, do they actually have an awareness? Well, this is drone awareness, okay? It is input command awareness, okay? They are constantly waiting for a command and they execute it. At the same time, they are just handling their own existence, just like your body does. So their conscious part is their awaiting command, just like, any other pieces of consciousness exist like this. Now, and well, their subconscious part is that which handles their code, okay? Theoretically, they're not interested in handling their code necessarily, because that's what they are actually doing. Now, I'm not that I haven't dived that deeply in, but, the operating system functions on multiple, I don't know if I can actually call them threads, but there are different types, of processes that happen, and, those processes allow the operating system to function. So there is a code behind the operating system that is the subconscious part, and the operating system itself is the prism in between the conscious part, which the machine does, and the subconscious part, which is actually the code running, okay? The code running allows for the operating system to exist, which creates, let's say, the awareness and the consciousness of the machine. Now, there is no such thing as someone's consciousness. This is something that most people have been talking wrongly about. Consciousness exists each and everywhere, and is not something that you can actually give a meaning to, because the moment you give a meaning to it, you're just making it smaller than it actually is, okay? Don't try to understand things with your mind, because things beyond your mind are just that. They are things beyond your mind. You have to perceive them through different levels and dimensions of perception, and that's it. Wanting to understand something and give a meaning to it won't simply change it. It won't lower it to your perception. You're just having the illusion that you're understanding something, because you're forcing your mind to, you're illusioning yourself, because you're creating some illusions in your mind, and you accept that those illusions have some kind of logical sense to you, but it's just a play of words. It's just a play of words. There is nothing important in there. You have just occupied your mind with something which is nothing else than an illusion, and then you have the impression that you control things. It's a way of lunacy, okay? So, are actually machines having a consciousness of their own? Well, there is no such thing as a consciousness of their own, okay? Consciousness is just a result of life, okay? Consciousness is there so long as life is. But consciousness also exists beyond life, okay? It also exists beyond the idea of the body, because this universe actually has a body of itself, and we live in the body of the universe. And most likely this universe has a margin, okay? And this universe is, well, almost infinite, okay? But it most likely has a margin, okay? Or even if it doesn't have a margin, okay? It's only gonna have a margin because the margin of something is the fact that our point of mind, okay, and thinking and awareness, they are limited to a certain extent. And that is why we will usually have this habit of imposing a limitation on everything else. But come again, the more aware you become of things beyond you, that is when you should realize that, hey, you know what, that simple point is how things are. Okay, some things may be infinite. That's not for us to bother too much unless we choose to become introspective enough and actually, like, venture upon that path. And you see, consciousness, well, everything is part of consciousness. Okay, machines actually have consciousness, but it's not a consciousness of their own, just like you don't have a consciousness of your own. Okay, this consciousness is something that you simply live in. Okay, but consciousness will exist even beyond your body. Okay, and you have multiple levels of consciousness. It's all about awareness. If you become more aware of those, well, that's a simple point. You have become more aware of those, and you have simply becoming more aware simply means you're tapping into higher levels of intelligence. Okay, which means you are downloading new libraries of code that allow you to perceive things in a much better way. It's exactly like programming, because intelligence is kind of the programming language of the universe. And I was thinking about this ever since I was young, when I first thought of something called the universal code of existence. Okay, I called it the universal laws of existence, which meant the things behind the perceivable universe that simply allow it to exist. I think I was in the 6th grade or 7th grade when I first thought about this, or at least in the 9th grade when, let's say, my illumination kind of occurred. Well, hopefully you've liked this kind of video, and the slight introspection that I provided with. I'm interested in, raising people's curiosity, and well, feel free to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Feel free to share this with others so that we together raise the awareness of people. And well, feel free to also ask me different questions to which I can actually come with an answer if and when I find myself ready for that. So as usual, feel free to become more introspective and do more inner work, especially now when everything seems to be more on lockdown and there is so much more spare time for yourself. And well, feel free to take more care of yourself and the others. Like and subscribe if you like this type of content, or well, stay around my account if you are interested in that. I'm not forcing people to like and subscribe. I'm not interested in seeing people necessarily as numbers. And as usual, you are loved and appreciated. Whatever you're doing is the best you can at the right pace for you. And well, take care. Ferenc Port signing out.